right. Cool. So we're going to talk about how we can work with XML in Visual Basic 9 that was released in November, so with Visual Studio 2008. If you haven't downloaded Visual Studio 2008, you can install the free VB Express edition on the Express sites and play with it, get a feel for some of the new language syntax. I've been doing a series of webcasts this month on the features of Visual Basic. I'm redoing this webcast for everyone because it was such a popular turnout and the recording got messed up, so let's hope this time it works. Okay, so if you don't know who I am, I'm a program manager on the Visual Studio community team at Microsoft, and I work directly with the Visual Basic team, so I've sort of taken on the VB community champion role. I do a lot of the content and how-do-I videos that are on the Visual Basic Developer Center, and there's the link there, msdn.com/vbasic. Before I joined Microsoft, I was a system architect for various healthcare companies and other types of businesses as well, but mostly in and out of the healthcare field for about 14 years now, I think. And my blog is blogs.msdn.com/Beth Massi. I do a lot of VB-related content, mostly around business application development. Okay, so if you're in that boat, you're doing database type systems, check out my blog. There's a lot of good, useful tips there. Okay, so let's get started. Visual Basic 9 had two distinct goals. When they decided that they wanted, were planning the Visual Basic 9, what were the main goals for the language? And one was shared across all languages. They wanted to simplify querying of data. So C# and Visual Basic, if you've ever heard of LINQ, you should probably have heard of LINQ many, many times now, Language Integrated Query. That's the feature that allows you to unify, it basically unifies the way you query distinct data sources. So you query relational databases, objects, services, XML in a very similar manner, and that is a language syntax that's baked into Visual Basic and C# called LINQ. Visual Basic also had another additional goal on top of that, because believe me, this is a pretty lofty one in itself. Visual Basic also wanted to simplify working with XML. So XML pretty much permeates everything that we do today. I started pretty long time ago programming in like the early 90s. And XML was not really the way to transmit data. It was more like EDI, fixed file formats, and that sort of stuff. But XML came around. We realized that it was a much easier format for humans at least, to represent hierarchical data. And over the time, it got easier and easier to work with, and the tools became faster and faster to the parsers. And so now we see XML everywhere. HTML, for instance, or XAML, right, or even RSS. So what Visual Basic wanted to do is allow you to easily create, manipulate, transform, work with this XML data. Okay, so XML is a first-class data type in the Visual Basic editor. Okay, so we're going to see a lot of examples of that. So here's our agenda. I'm going to talk about what XML literals are and XML properties. These are very specific Visual Basic 9 features. But I'm also then going to talk a lot about the LINQ to XML API, which is available, of course, from any language, C#, Visual Basic. But what's interesting about Visual Basic is there's XML properties, and you can enable IntelliSense on those properties as well. So it allows you to really work with XML in a very WYSIWYG type of approach. So we'll do a lot of demos, creating, querying, transforming XML, and I'm hoping that I can convince you that you will not need a transformation language like XSLT anymore. Then I'll show you some miscellaneous tips and tricks, like things that you would never even expect, like XML literals to help you do, like text merging and multi-line strings without underscores and things like that. So we'll dive into a lot of demos. It's only me here, so I'm going to have to just periodically check for questions, but I'll definitely spend as much time as you guys need to answer all the questions in the end. I'll go through the question manager in the end. So here's a diagram of LINQ, of the framework. Okay, so the pieces that basically compose how we work with LINQ, and basically it's three sets of things. VB language, the C# language, and other languages have implemented syntax in their language and their compilers to be able to easily write LINQ queries. There's a framework, the LINQ, like the .NET LINQ query framework underneath that actually the compilers just translate, say send expression trees and translate what the query syntax is to this framework. Underneath that framework, there's LINQ-enabled data sources, or you may have heard LINQ providers. Okay, so LINQ providers are responsible for taking these LINQ queries and translate them to the proper syntax to actually query the data sources. So for instance, with LINQ to SQL, okay, the LINQ-enabled ADO.NET providers like LINQ to SQL and LINQ to entities will take that and translate those statements to SQL syntax. Okay, so under the covers, ADO.NET is still being used to execute those commands. Okay, so ADO.NET has not gone away. There's just another layer on top to make it easier to query in a unified way. LINQ to XML is another API, a brand new API that allows us to work and query with XML, query XML much easier than before. Okay, and we're going to be concentrating on this piece of the LINQ framework. Okay, so programming XML today, and if we do a lot of programming with XML, I'm going to say today, well, before Visual Basic 9, let's put it that way, we would use the XML DOM, the document object model, in order to create XML documents. And the problem with the XML DOM is that it's an imperative model, meaning that and it's very document-centric, right? So you have to actually create a document object and then ask that object to create elements. Right, so you can't have a fragment, for instance. You have to actually be constructing an entire document. And the XML DOM does not allow you, because of the way it's not like enumerable itself, that you can't actually write LINQ queries against the XML DOM. And additionally, it's pretty memory intensive because you're working with an entire document all the time. And if we take a look at this code here, you can kind of figure it out. You spend a couple seconds and you take a look and you see what it's doing. Okay, so we've got, it's creating a couple elements and setting, the inner text, the elements of the company name. And at any rate, if we take a look at what it's trying to produce there in the bottom right-hand corner, you might not necessarily know right away that that's what it's going to look like. So it's kind of not a very WYSIWYG approach to working with XML. So LINQ to XML tries to correct this by making it more of a declarative model. And you notice in this specific code, I'm not even creating a document. Okay. I'm just creating an element, and I'm like throwing in some contact information, some name, and some phone. And you can see that sort of here that you can see that there's a couple elements underneath the contact element. Okay, and so now we've got more of a element-centric model. So we can just kind of throw elements and other elements, and you can just take a fragment. So the contact ends up being just an X element or an XML fragment. Okay, the integrated query here, you can see that now you can actually write a LINQ query in here, so we can, put anything we want to in here to query that XML and throw it in there. And it's a lot smaller. The code is a lot smaller. Now, this is a syntax that you would use to actually access directly the LINQ to XML API. And if you took out some underscores and added a semicolon, this is what the C# syntax would look like as well. VB wanted to take it one step further. Okay, so in Visual Basic, they introduced XML Literals. So you can actually just type XML or paste it, XML, directly into the editor. And in this case, in this particular example, the emp variable will be inferred as an X element. Okay, so the compiler actually knows that this is an X element. So basically, it translates the construction of these objects to the LINQ to XML API. And in fact, in a lot of cases, if you have a very complex document, it can actually optimize the way that it creates these objects under the cover. So it actually could even be faster than you deciding to create it manually like this. So it's actually better to use XML literals than it is to not only just for readability, but also sometimes it will increase your performance. Okay, so what would be XML literals without being able to put values inside of them in your code? So this is an example of an embedded expression, and this embedded expression syntax is a similar experience to ASP.NET, where it has a less than % equals, and inside it's like an escape, okay, into Visual Basic code. And in this case, we're throwing a LINQ query in here, okay. But if you take a look at this code, you actually can see that, because of the indentation and the fact that there's actual XML elements in here, it's a lot easier to see that this is going to create an employees, fragment or X element with employee elements and with name and age inside. So it's pretty WYSIWYG. It's what you see is what you get here, right? And it's very intuitive. And so, that follows pretty much the goals of Visual Basic in general, right? It wants to be a very productive and intuitive language. Okay, that's what I just said. So what I'm going to do is talk about some navigating, how we navigate XML. And it's called axes, okay? So axis properties, right? So what that means is you can have child, descendants, and attribute axis and in order to easily access the parts of an XML document. Okay, so in Visual Basic, well, first of all, if you're going to just access the axes of the XML document through the LINQ to XML API directly, there are attribute, descendants, and element methods, okay, on your X element in order for you to access all of these different axes. Okay. But in Visual Basic, you could actually have shorthand notation for this. So you'll notice, for instance, in the attribute axis, you have an @ sign, so an @ department ID. So there's no method call like passing in a string in order to get the values back. Okay, so the descendants axis is the 3-dot notation, okay, and then the name of the element you're looking for, which means find any of these elements any levels deep in this document because you're not sure where it is. And then just a dot notation just gives you the child axis, right, the one right underneath. Okay, so and additionally, we can enable IntelliSense on this. Okay, so it basically allows you to pass. Instead of passing strings, right, you're actually getting IntelliSense on the axes, and so axis members, and so that way it allows you to easily work with the XML. Okay, so you won't make as many runtime mistakes because at design time it's guiding you through. Okay, and we'll see some examples of that. Okay, so language integrated query for XML is an expressive power of XPath and XQuery. So if you're using a lot of XPath, XQuery, XSLT, to transform and manipulate and query XML, you should be able to do everything you're doing there in Visual Basic now. So you won't have to make that context switch. If you're doing Visual Basic programming, you can stay inside of Visual Basic to do this type of stuff. Okay, and we did leverage the experience with the DOM. So like I showed, it's element-centric, not document-centric. And the APIs, they're very symmetric between XDocument and XElement classes. So I'm going to just move along and show you some demos, get into the code, because that's really going to help you understand a lot what I'm talking about. Okay, so we've got Visual Studio open here, and I've just written down some notes here so that it helps me guide you through this. So what I want to do is I want to just show you some XML literals. My XML equals. Notice that I can just start typing some XML. When I hit enter, you notice it actually threw in the closing tag element, and it's indented me now, so I can say node 0 or node 1. Okay, so Visual Basic is actually recognizing that this is an X element. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say XML literals. Now, XML literals, aren't as exciting unless we have some way to embed expressions inside, right? So I could put any embedded expression inside of here. Okay, so when you go into an embedded expression, any Visual Basic code can run inside there. So now, this is still an X element. It's going to pop out to now in here. So let's just take a look at what this will look like. The APIs for the elements and the X elements and the X documents are very similar. So there's a save method on them, and you can save them to files. So XML. Okay, and let's just show that in Internet Explorer. Okay, and we'll just run this. And it should open up in an Explorer, and it will show us the root node and the current date and time, right, stuff right in the middle. Okay. So you notice when I saved out the X element, it actually put the processing instruction up here, the XML processing instruction up here, right? Because when it wrote it out, it has to write it out as a document, okay? So as a well-formed document. So that's why we've got that, okay? So there you go. So that's pretty easy. So you know the possibilities are pretty endless when it comes to how many levels you want to nest, and we'll show some pretty complex examples of that. So let's create some XML from a LINQ query now, something a little bit more exciting. So let's put this out. Okay, so let's create a document of all the processes running on my machine. Probably a lot of them. I'm running Vista, so let's see, dim proc. And what I want to do is I want to create a document. So I want to say processes, CSS. And inside, I want to have like all the processes on the machine. So let's just do this process. I have to escape now, so I'm going to set up an embedded expression, and I'm going to write a LINQ query. Okay, from proc in, let's see, that would be system.diagnostics.process.getProcesses. Okay, so that's a list of all the processes on my machine. Okay, I want to select, now here's where I'm going to like put in another level of XML. So I'm going to say process. Okay. And inside here, I'm going to open up another embedded expression. And now here's the variable proc, so it's scoping correctly. And let's just put, actually what I want to do is put the name first. We'll do the name. Then I'll open up and we'll do proc.process name, I think. There we go, process name. Okay, and see, I'm just creating a document here, a name and what else? Threads. Good. That's another one, proc.thread.count. That's good. And actually, let's put an attribute in here, ID. Okay. And proc.ID. There you go. All right, cool. So that actually, I created a document of processes, okay, on my machine. Okay, so let's go ahead and try running this sucker. Oops, not processes. Process.start. Oops, and I am the worst typer in the world. If anybody's ever watched my How Do I videos, I stink at that. All right, so let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so actually, it's very quick to create. The slow part is actually starting Internet Explorer, as a matter of fact. So there's all the processes running on my machine. So I quickly created an XML document from some in-memory, some collection of objects. Okay, so pretty easy to do. All right, so I'm hoping everybody's nodding their head and not falling asleep in their eggs. So anyways, so let's move along. I think that's pretty amazing, and we'll show some more examples of how we can query our data from our database in a little bit. Okay, so let's take now and transform the document that I created above in memory. Let's actually transform it. Say I want to just pull out all the names. Okay, then we can use access properties in order to query the elements in this XML document. So if I'm going to say name, then names equals, I could just say, names right there. And we could actually just put in an embedded expression. We don't even need really a LINQ query. We could just say like proc, name. Okay, so we can just use access properties to access that. But because I'm just saying give me all the names any level deep, that is a descendants access. So if I had multiple names nested inside of the document, it would pull them all out. But because I know where it is, it's actually more efficient. It's faster to use the child access. So in this case, it would be process dot name. Okay. So that the child access walking down the hierarchy, that's the same thing, but it's only going to find, this name, but that's the only one I have in the document. So just keep in mind that using the child access is a lot faster than using the descendants, but sometimes it's necessary to use the descendants because you don't know the incoming document coming in, you don't actually know, maybe not quite sure where the level is, okay, so where you are. So you can use descendants access to go ahead and pull that all out. So what if we wanted to transform the XML with linked XML using Axis properties? Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm just going to speed it up a little bit because I'm noticing my time here. So I'm just going to drag it over this one. Okay, so looks like I called this XML props. So let's just change this here. There we go, XML props. Okay, and then we'll just take that out real quick. Okay, so here's what I did here. Now I'm not creating a new XML document from this document. What I'm doing is I'm just querying the value. So what I'm doing is I'm just creating a LINQ query that's going to create an anonymous type of value and ID. So what I'm going through is there's these items, okay, it's an anonymous type, and all it's got in there is a name property and an ID property, okay. So once we run this query, you can see this anonymous type, that ID and name. And the reason why it's got lowercase ID and lowercase name is because it's pulling that from the actual element and the attribute, okay. So you notice I could have also aliased this if I wanted to, name equals. All right, and in that case, then it would end up being a capital name. But it is, you know, Visual Basic doesn't care about case. Okay, so there you go. All right, so that's an easy way to go ahead and query the document and then just pull out values into objects. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that one just to show you. Okay, so there you go. I pulled it all out, and I actually was ordering by the name, so you'll see it in alphabetical order here. Okay, pretty cool. All right, so now we were just working with XML. We've just been kind of working inside memory, in-memory documents. Of course, we can load these from disk. So you can go ahead and load files from disk. And I've got a customer's XML. Let me take this out real quick. Okay, so I've got a customer's XML in this project, my customer's XML. Let's go ahead and open this, take a look at it. You'll see that it's just got some customers that I pulled out of the Northwind database and into a file here. Okay, so you'll notice that, it's got actually some, casing, camel casing, and proper casing going on with the elements, and there's our data. So we want to load this from disk, and the way you do it is very simple. So on the X document and the X element object, there's a load. Okay, there's a shared load method. Okay, and it will load from any URI or any file on disk. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just loading my customers. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to want to select all the customers in the UK. So I have UK and Canada and United States in the current file. Okay. So this is just going to take all the UK customers. Let's go ahead and run this one. Okay. So as you can see, it's UK. There we go. Just the ones in the UK. Okay. So I was able to just pull out the whole entire element. Okay, so in this case, I just said UK customers, and I'm just saying, select cost. Cost in this case is the X element itself, right? So it just pops that right in there. If I wanted to change the names of the elements, then I would need to actually create new elements, right? Because I would actually have to do, okay, well, I want to select, customer. Maybe I wanted it lowercase. Okay, then I would actually have to build this up, maybe name, right? And then I would be able to go ahead and, maybe I just want name. Oops. Then I would go ahead and just put an embedded expression here, name. Okay, there we go, name dot value. Value. Okay. Now the thing is, though, if you notice, oops, and I think I messed that one up. So the order by here. There we go. Okay, so if I want the order by, I got to put it out here. Okay, so at any rate, what I wanted to do, notice though, if I put capital name, if I didn't put capital name, I put lowercase name, it actually wouldn't work because in this document, if you notice, we were using proper case. Okay? Now Visual Basic is case insensitive, but XML is not. It's case sensitive. So in this case, I would not end up with anything. Okay, so in order to prevent that, we can enable IntelliSense, okay, in order to help you guide you through this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable IntelliSense on here. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click. And the way we enable IntelliSense is you just need to add a schema. Okay, you need to add an XSD to the project. Okay, when you add an XSD to the project, it'll use that schema to guide you through the IntelliSense for the XML. Okay, and I'll show you how you can work with multiple schemas too, by using namespaces in a bit. Now, the way we do that easily, though, is there's a schema XML to Schema tool that you can download from the Visual Basic Developer Center. Just go to Downloads. And right now it's an add-on. It's just a template here. It's a template that will install an Add New Item template. In SP1 of Visual Studio, this will be built in. Okay, but for now, just download that tool. And what that tool makes it easy to do is it makes it easy to infer schemas from XML data and then immediately just puts it into your project for you. So I'm going to call this my customers XSP. Okay, and then I'm just going to add from file. So you know it's going to add from the web, or you can add as XML. You can just paste the XML directly in here. So I'm going to just add from file, and there's my customers. This is having trouble with my file system today. Come on, you can do it. All right, exciting. Okay, there we go. Okay, so okay. Okay, so now you'll notice that, oh, it looks like I already had my customers on disk here, so it just created a new one here. But here you go. It's basically inferred the schema, and you'll notice here are the correct casing. Okay, so now what the cool thing now though is we can go back over here, and you'll see here now I've got IntelliSense. So now when I open this up, I can see name right there. That's what I want. Okay, so this is an easy way to go ahead and work with XML in a much easier way, and prevent you from making any big mistakes. Okay, so let's move along and talk, because I've only got half an hour left, I realize here, a little more, and I want to get to questions in the end, and I've got a lot of demos. So let's move along, and I will go ahead and save that. And I've got some more. I'm going to move that out of the way. I want to show you how hard it used to be to work with XML and the incremental improvements that were made with the LINQ XML API and then XML Literals. So this is kind of a deep dive on the literals. What I want to show you here, this program, what it's doing is doing the exact same things in 3 different ways. Okay? It's creating a customer document, okay, an XML document of customers, but it's doing it using the DOM, okay, and then it's using the LINQ XML API directly, and then it's using VB9 XML Literals. Now, the XML DOM, I'm going to move this out of the way real quick. Actually, I'll move this out of the way. Okay, so you can see this. So here's the XML DOM code. Okay, you'll see that I even have, I have to create a document first, okay, and then I can create the elements on that document, just like I showed in the slide before. And this is just basically making element. Make element, I have a little helper function to actually make the element, okay, so it's setting the inner text to the value. And then it's iterating through a collection of customers I have in memory here. And then, of course, creating, append child, address, city, state, zip, right, appending all these XML elements. Okay, so if you were looking just first glance at this code, coming back to it a year later, you might actually have to spend some time or step through it to figure out, what was going on. And this is a very simple document, right? So if you had even more complex documents, this might take a while to take a look at and see what you were doing. So using the LINQ XML API directly, here's what the code looks like here, okay? And this is exactly how you would write the code in C#, okay? Just, like I said, take out the underscores and put a semicolon at the end. So this now is much better, right? We're taking a look and we're using a query. We're saying, okay, from all the customers in that collection, we're just creating a new X element that has 2 attributes on it, and underneath that it has, 4 more elements. Okay? So that's using the XML API directly, and the functional construction ends up cleaning up the code a lot. Okay, so converting to XML using literals, though, now we can see in Visual Basic, this basically looks exactly like the document that will be produced. Okay, so we can see that the first name and last name are attributes, and then there are the 4 elements underneath customer. So it's even easier to read and to construct. Okay, so and as a matter of fact, the compiler can actually produce even better performing code than the above one, because it uses a static analysis to see exactly what the best way is to create this object under the covers. Okay, so you can rely on Visual Basic to do that for you, which is nice. Okay, so the exact code that looks like it may not look exactly like this, but it's going to produce exactly what you said. Okay, that's the basic idea. Okay, So I'm not going to run through that, but that's the code to take a look through the steps and the evolution of what our code looks like now. So let's do some more fun stuff, creating XML. Let's create some complex XML, but let's create it from our database. Okay, because most of the time I like to usually show practical examples of things, and when I work with XML, create XML, I've always 90% of the time I've created it from data in a database. Okay, so what I've got here, and I'm not going to go into too many details on LINQ to XML, or LINQ to SQL, excuse me, but if you've been to another webcast or you've been playing with it, there's a new LINQ to SQL classes item that you can add to your project, and what that does is it allows you to access your database tables as objects, okay? And the LINQ to SQL API will translate the queries that we write over these objects to T-SQL syntax, okay, and send that to SQL Server. Okay, so this LINQ to SQL works with SQL Server and SQL Server Express. Okay, so what I've got is I've just dragged customer order, order detail, and product onto this design surface, and what that did was create some classes for me that we can use in this program. So what I want to do is I want to create an XML document, and a very complex one actually. I want to create a document of all the customers, their orders, their order details, and the products that are on those order details in one giant document. Okay, so I'm going to basically do this one really quick. Okay, so we're going to do a very, very long, complex document. So let's go this one, creating a complex document. Okay. So let's take a look at what we got. You'll notice it does scroll off to the page here, but I've got orders. Okay, so I've got an orders document, of all the orders. So customers is the first, node here. Then I've got, their name and phone, and then all their orders underneath that. And I'm actually doing an order total attribute that is an aggregate of all of the sums of all of the order detail items. Okay. And then I'm going through all the details, and I'm saying for all the details, tell me the item ID, the detail product ID, and the product name. Okay. So we're going to go through and we're going to create a fairly complex document here. But you notice you can nest, these embedded expressions and XML literals any level, n levels deep, and as many as you need. The other thing I'm doing here is I'm calculating how long that takes to create that, basically even to just save it to disk too. To create it and save it to disk. Okay. Because you'll see that when we write all this data out, the long part is actually Internet Explorer loading up this big document. Okay. So you'll see that milliseconds should be around, 8,000 milliseconds or so, less. It should even be less than that. Okay. It should be like, I don't know, a couple seconds. So let's go ahead and run this. And there's a pretty good amount of data in here. I mean, we're talking a few hundred orders, I think. Okay, so there, 3805 milliseconds. Okay, so now what takes a long time is actually start up Internet Explorer and show this document. It'll come up anytime now. So the LINQ to XML API and the LINQ to SQL API are fairly quick. Okay, so here we go. Here are all our orders. So let me just allow this so that I can go ahead and collapse some of these things. So we've got order. There's our order total. Here's our detail items. Okay, so we only have one on there. Here's details. Here's a couple items on this details. There's detail. There's an order. Okay, order. Okay, so this one customer has a few orders, right? Okay. And there's the next customer. All right, so you can get a pretty complex document going on. Cool. Okay, so I hope that was pretty exciting. We can query this document now, right? We can query this document. So we've created it from data. That's data in our database, created a document. Now we can go ahead and just query over that again. So let me go ahead and query a complex document. And I just have the A order. So I'm just saying, give me all the, customers like the letter that start with the letter A. Okay, that starts with A. All right, so let's go ahead and just run that. This is exactly the same as what I was doing with the in-memory documents using the in-memory collections of processes before. It's exactly the same. So that's what LINQ does. It unifies that querying of data, regardless if you're querying objects in memory or SQL data. It's a similar experience. Okay, so here are all the A orders. I didn't put the customer name in these ones. Okay, so that's an easy way to just go ahead and transform that data. All right, cool. So that's some ideas, some complex XML. Okay, because you can get very, very complex. So what can we do to help us organize these schemas? Because, you know, we might need to work with multiple schemas in our project, right? And I just showed importing an XSD, one XSD without a namespace ends up being, you know, the default namespace is empty. Okay, so in other words, if you didn't specify a namespace in your XSD, it's going to be anytime you start writing XML anywhere, it's going to try and, you know, show you that IntelliSense. So so here's an example. So in order to separate those things, or basically make the IntelliSense smarter, and also to organize your schemas, you would need to use XML namespaces. And a lot of things already have XML namespaces, obviously. Okay, so you know, like XAML and schemas and all sorts of stuff, Excel spreadsheets, they all have schemas, okay, that are available. So here's an example where I've got a couple pieces of XML. I've got plants. Let's take a look at some plants. And right now I've commented out any namespace. So right now it doesn't have any namespace in it whatsoever. Okay, so if I went ahead and imported the schema, basically plant, you can take a look at this, we'll run it in a second, but plant and common, this is going to work because there's no namespace specified. So I'm just using the elements and with an empty namespace, default. Okay, so we've got all of the names here. I just pulled them out of that document. Now, if I wanted to start working with another, so let's go ahead and import the namespace, for instance. So let's go back over here. Okay, and move this namespace up into here. Okay, so now we've got a namespace defined for plants. I'm going to go ahead and press save. Okay, so now of course, because now that we're accessing this, you know, directly, this won't actually pull up anything, right? So if we go ahead and run through this, there's nothing. Okay, that's because it's in a namespace, and we're not using a namespace in our code. Okay, so in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and import, or basically add a schema. We're going to add new item. And this will enable our IntelliSense as well. But when it infers the schema, it's going to actually put the target namespace as appropriate now. So I'm going to call this plants. Add from file. And we'll wait for my operating system to respawn. I think it's time to do it all, to clean up on this. I've had Vista for a couple, I don't know, about a year and a half now. Okay, here we go. So here's plants. Okay. Okay, so now it looks like I had another, but anyways, here's plants. And here's the target namespace. Okay, so, oops, excuse me. Here's the target namespace. Okay, so this is picked up exactly from the namespace inside the XML document. So now, in order to work with this, okay, basically we're not going to get any IntelliSense quite yet because we haven't actually imported any namespaces yet. Okay, so there's no IntelliSense yet. Okay, so what we need to do in Visual Basic, the import statement was amended or added to basically, and allows you to now import XML namespaces as well. Okay, so that's exactly what I want to do, and I'm going to call this plants. Actually, I always forget what the syntax is here. Plants equals, okay. And so now you'll see that I also have customers in there because I have this customer's XSD already is sitting in here. But you'll notice here is now plants, okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and import that, okay. So now when we come back down over here, okay, you'll see here's plants. Okay, so now I've got basically the namespace alias in front. Okay, so now I'll be able to go ahead and query this correctly. And the nice thing about the IntelliSense is you don't actually have to type, because if you have like a bunch of schemas, right, a bunch of namespaces imported, as you'll see in a second, I'll import customers in a second. You don't actually have to type the name of the alias namespace. Okay, you can actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit C. Okay, directly, and it's actually plant common, then you just hit tab, okay, and then you're there, okay. Actually, I didn't want common, I actually wanted plant, right. So now if you do this, though, you see that it doesn't actually show the namespace, right. So I hit P, there's plant and price, right, tab, okay. Okay, so this now also, this common, you know, that needs to be changed too, it needs to have the plant, so let's just go plant. So now you'll see that I've got this check mark I don't know if you guys noticed this, but I'm going to speak to this a little bit. There's now a check mark underneath, which means there's basically a green check mark on all of these elements. And the reason why is because Visual Basic now knows that we are under the plant node here. We definitely know that there are these elements underneath that plant node. Up here, when I was working with it, you'll notice there's question marks. And this is because, you know, we're doing the descendants axis, and we're at the top of this document, this X element, and there's all of these elements in here. So it's not quite sure what, you know, you want. So it's basically displaying all of them to you, okay? So, but once we, oops, I didn't want to do availability, I'm on the plane. Okay, so once we get this, we can now go back into this scope, and it scopes down now to what exactly under plan. Okay, so now I think I want common. There we go, common. Okay, I just hit C, and now we've got, basically now when I run it again, because we've specified the namespace, now we get back to where we were. Okay. Now the reason why I did all of this is because now we can work with multiple XML files in the same, you know, in the same module or in the same project. Because now I've got customers down here, right? So say I've got customers. Now it's giving me like a little squiggly because it's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. You haven't imported this. Okay. So I have an XSD file already defined for customers, so I can just add another import, okay, and I want to do XML NS colon and customers, okay, equals, and now I can go ahead and do customers. Okay, so once I do that, you'll notice that my squigglies go away, everything is fine. And now I'm working with two separate XML documents, okay, in the same module. Okay, so when I run this, we'll get plants, and then we'll get customers. And there's our customers. All right? So that's just a simple way of working with XML namespaces, okay? And there's a lot of rules on namespace bubbling and that sort of stuff. Then I've got an article that's coming out in Code Magazine this summer that talks about all of the nuances of namespace bubbling. But there's also a lot of documentation in the help, okay? So since I've only got 20 more minutes and I wanted to show you some more practical examples, let's get them moving here. So I want to show you one of my favorite, I think, more practical examples of using LINQ XML, and I'll definitely show you about 3 different things here. So this is one I've done before in my blog, and what I want to show you here, let's just real quick, I don't know if people realize a couple things. Word 2007, Excel, PowerPoint, these are all files based now, the file formats are now based on the Open Office XML standard, okay? So which means that the Word, Excel, and PowerPoint now are actually just archive files. And inside, they're zip files. If you rename them to zip, they will show you inside a bunch of stuff. And some of that stuff is XML. I don't know why Word is not starting. It would be a good idea. It would be helpful if this thing started. What I wanted to show you is basically I wanted to type in a document and save it to my disk and then rename it. Let's just give it a couple more seconds. I really have no idea why it's, of course, you know what it is? It always gets stage fright. Things get stage fright. Okay, here we go. All right, so I've got a document. I'm just going to say, hello. Okay, and I'm going to save this. Let's save it. Hopefully this won't take another 10 minutes. All right, so there's the docx file format, right? So I'm going to save it onto my desktop. Second. The computer always goes much slower when thousands of people are watching you. Okay, so I'm just going to save it on the desktop. So let's just save. Okay. Now we're going to close this. Okay. So if people on the phone who know this already, just bear with me. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take this docx file and name it zip. Yep, I'm going to change that to zip. Now you'll see, I'm going to open this up now. Okay, so look what's inside. Okay, so this is part of the file format, a new OpenOffice XML file format. And each type of document, either document or Excel spreadsheet or PowerPoint, has different stuff inside of here. But there's a standard way in describing what that stuff is. Okay, and I'm not going to go into all of that. You can read this back. But if we take a look and see in this Word folder, you'll see there's the document XML. Okay, so if I open this, we should be able to see, we'll see a bunch of like processing instructions for Word and stuff, but there's our text. Okay? And you'll notice that this is just an XML. This is just XML. So I could actually take this and copy it and paste it right into Visual Basic, right? Okay, so I could just go ahead up here and my doc equals dim my doc equals. You just paste it right in here. Okay. Oh, it looks like, well, Internet Explorer obviously puts a little bit of junk on it, but there we go. Okay, so now we've got this document, right? So this piece of the Word document can be replaced easily. We could text merge. We can, instead of saying hello everyone, we could go ahead and put in any code we wanted to, right? We could put like hello, everyone, and maybe environment. This is what I get for being cute, but here, environment username or something like that. Okay, or whatever you want. Okay, so now you can start to see that this could actually become pretty easy to do mail merging, right? So what I want to do is I want to show you what I've written already. And there's just a trick to replacing that specific piece of XML inside of a document. So what I've got here, I'm going to expand this, and I'm going to get some room here. Okay, so what I've done is I did the same exact thing. I took a document, just the document XML, and I pasted it into this LINQ query, okay? And what I'm doing is I'm selecting a new letter object. And the only reason why I'm doing that is because I want to create multiple letters based on the customer ID. Okay, I'm using this customer ID as a file name, is a way to create the file name. Okay, so within the document, what I'm doing is I'm selecting all the orders in the Northwind database that shipped, greater than last year, okay? I had to go in and massage some data because most of the data in there is from before the turn of the century. At any rate, what I'm doing is I wanted to basically notify customers that their order has shipped, right? So this document, I just go ahead and I basically put in embedded expressions to indicate where I wanted to pop in people's names, the city, that sort of thing. And now you can obviously do this with custom regions, custom XML regions. But I thought this was kind of nice because you could actually take and just go ahead and replace the text too if you needed to. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways you could do this, but this is just one easy way to do it. Now I should also note though that you actually don't have to have Word on the machine here that's running this code. Okay, this is just VB creating the format of Word. Okay, so that's the key. So you could create a letter generator on a server, right? Which is a very bad idea to go ahead and open up Word itself to do mail merging on a server process, because Word kind of takes over your machine, right? It's not a multi-threaded process. But here you could actually easily create an ASP.NET page to do this, and this is just a console application, and you don't have to have Word installed on this machine running this code. Now all this code underneath here is just about replacing that document XML. Okay, that's all it's doing. It's basically just what I'm doing is I'm writing out, the letter, okay, creating the docx file. And then I'm just I'm deleting the part, the XML, document XML, and I'm basically just going ahead and writing out lines. Okay, so I'm just replacing that piece. So if we go ahead and run this, and I have this detailed on my blog too. So if you're interested, just go ahead and check out my blog. Okay, so it says mail merging. Okay, so it created 4 letters, and I'm just opening up the directory now, which takes a while apparently. Okay, so but the actual mail merging process was extremely quick. Okay, creating that LINQ query and then going ahead and creating these documents. So you'll see there's 9:48 a.m. So I'm not lying to you. They actually just created these letters. Now if we open up Word, hopefully it doesn't take forever again. Okay, what we'll see is the current date and time in the corner, and we'll see all of the data that was mail merged into the document. Of course, Now remember, I said you don't have to have Word on the machine that creates the document. You just have to have Word on the machine that reads the document. Okay, so here's 4/4/2008, so I know that it worked. Okay, and there's the data merged in. Okay, cool. So I think that's a fairly practical example of using linked XML, because remember, XML is just everywhere. Okay, so here's another good use of linked XML. Okay, so I also have this detailed on my blog as well. What I wanted to do is I wanted to take all of the customers in Northwind in Oregon and map them out using a virtual Earth. Okay, Virtual Earth API is available on the web there to take a look at. I'm not going to go into exactly how it works, but rest assured, what it does is it can take an RSS feed, okay, an RSS feed, and what you specify in that RSS feed are latitude and longitude points on a map, okay. So basically all I'm doing, what I'm doing is I'm saying for all the customers in Northwind, okay, I'm just going to, where their country is in region, and I just specified Oregon, okay. I'm creating these items. Title, the contact name, the description, okay, which is their address and city, okay, and then I'm calling this get geocode. Now remember, in embedded expression, any Visual Basic code can run, which includes your own functions, right? So I've got a function, and because the Northwind database does not hold latitude and longitude information, it has address information, we need to call another service in order to get that, okay? And fortunately, the geocoder US, it actually only works on US addresses, but there are other sites that do international. This is a free RESTful service. So what it'll do is it will return the latitude and longitude for any address that you send it, okay? You notice all I'm doing is calling the load of URL. I'm just building this URL up and then putting the address, and I'm just calling load, okay? This will error out if the geocoder US service does not, there's a lot of fictitious addresses in Northwind. If they don't exist, it will just return an exception. It will return actually some text, okay, which causes an exception because it's not an X element. At any rate, all I'm doing is I'm then putting the point and the latitude and longitude. So this is the document that comes back, okay? It's an RDS file. Okay, so then we're just putting that back into our RSS. Okay, and then the JavaScript code goes ahead and loads that RSS file and passes it to Virtual Earth. So, and I think Jim Duffy did a pretty cool .NET Rocks TV, I think, that shows basically what I had started. He actually took it a little further and mapped out all the golf courses that he lives near. Okay, so it's kind of cool. So you should check out .NET Rocks TV. You see, there's a pretty good episode on there. They actually a lot of great episodes. Okay, so this is now calling. First of all, it's queried all of our Northwind customers in Oregon. It's now calling the geocoder US service, and there it passed it to Virtual Earth, and now I've got back a map. So Virtual Earth returned a map. So based on that RSS feed. So Liz Nixon and Howard Snyder actually have real addresses, okay? So from this point on now, this is just all Virtual Earth, okay? I'm not actually writing any code in here, okay? If we click on it again, or we could zoom in, okay? So she lives in downtown Portland, apparently. Okay, so this is just a really easy way to just, create RSS, because a lot of APIs, and especially Virtual Earth, uses RSS. Okay, so now you can start to implement some of this stuff in your own applications easily in literally like one line of code and one helper function. Okay. One very long line of code. I really like how lines of code are getting extremely long. We're going to have to actually specify one line of code that's 10 lines long. Okay. All right, cool. So for the last 8 minutes, I'm just going to do something that I think is also another good practical example of using LINQ to XML. And then I'll take questions. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create something from complete scratch, okay? And what I'm going to do is I want to take all the customers in Northwind and put them in this Excel spreadsheet. Okay, very, very simple thing to do. So it shouldn't take very long. It should take like 2 minutes, right? So let's go ahead and create like a header. Let's see, let's put name, okay, and country and phone. So I just want to pull out those 3 fields. Okay, so let's go ahead and make this nice, bold. Of course, bold is a complex function in Excel, so that takes a long time. So, yes, all of my office is having stage fright today. Visual Studio's been pretty good though. Okay, here we go. So what I want to do is now I want to just put in a dummy line of data. So I'm just going to put Beth, and my country is USA, and my phone number. That's my real number. Give me a call anytime. So now what I want to do is save this, but I'm going to save it as, I want to save it instead of as an Excel spreadsheet. I want to just save it as, so it's compatible with 2003 as well. I want to save it as just XML, like an XML format, Excel XML format. So once it comes back, okay, so here we go. I'm going to create this XML spreadsheet 2003, okay, so that's compatible, okay, with that. And so let's just call it customer XML, and I'll put it on my desktop. I can find it. Okay, yep. I want to save it as that format. Okay, and I'm just going to close this. So now, here it is right here. So now what I want to do is I want to open it, but I don't want to open it with Excel. I actually want to open it with Notepad. Okay, so here's Notepad. Here's the Excel document. I'm going to just take Control A, Control C. I'm going to copy this into my clipboard. Okay. Now I'm going to open up Visual Studio. Okay. I'm going to create a new project. And I'm just going to create a console app for this example. Okay, and what I want to do is I'm going to just paste this in so I don't lose it. Dim sheet equals, and we'll just paste that sucker right in there. Okay, so there's our XML. There's the XML format of Excel. Okay. So next thing I want to do is I want to easily access my database. So I'm just going to add new LINQ to SQL classes, and we'll just drag customer on the form. So LINQ to SQL classes, and we'll call this Northwind. Okay. This will open up the OR designer, and I should have a connection to Northwind from my Server Explorer. Okay, that's Northwind. Okay, tables. Okay, and we're just going to drag customers over here. Okay, cool. So now what I'm going to do is DB as new Northwind data context. Okay, so that basically just this data context is the thing that actually knows how to communicate to the database. Okay, so now what we can do is we can say dim customers equals, and we're going to write a LINQ query here. And what we want to do is we want to replace this row, okay, this dummy row that I put in. Okay, I'm going to just cut it out of here. Okay, we want to replace that with our real customer data, right? Name, country, and phone. Okay, so let's go back up here. Okay, and we're going to create a LINQ query that does that. So from C in db.customers, okay, select. What I want to select is I want to select something that looks like this, right? Except I want, instead of put Beth here, okay, I want to put C dot, we'll use company name instead. Okay, and then here, we'll put C dot, what is that, phone? No, country. And here, oops, we'll put C dot phone. Okay, so now the only last thing to do is you'll notice here's this complaining about the namespace again, right? So what we need to do is we need to import all of these namespaces that are inside of this document, of this XML document, right? So instead of pulling all this out manually, I actually created a little snippet, okay, just to speed it up. So I'm just going to create this import. I'm going to put it up here. Okay, so all these imports, we're importing the same schemas inside of our document. Okay, so now you'll notice the SS goes away. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to just take customers, the results of this, and I want to put it into the sheet. So we're going to put it right here, customers, right? Now the only last thing left to do is in this particular version of Excel, it's got this row count, right? So it's going to complain if this row count doesn't match. And before it was 2, but now it's going to be customers plus customers.count plus 1 plus the header. Okay? So that's it. Now I'm ready to write this out. So let's go ahead and say sheet.save. Okay. .xml, and then we'll do a process start, and that will open up Excel because of the namespaces up there. So cust.xml. Cool. All right, so if I didn't miss any steps, this should actually produce a Excel spreadsheet with all the customers and Northwind dumped right out into it. There we go. Okay, so that's a really easy way to just get started and effectively use LINQ to XML. You didn't really have to worry about how namespace bubbling works or what's happening under the covers. Really, I just easily put all of the customers into my XML document. Okay, and it's in an Excel format. Okay, so this is also on my blog. I've got a lot of other examples. And since it's 10 o'clock now, I'm going to start taking questions. So let me just run through a couple of the resources here. Put this up on the screen. Just make sure you download Visual Studio if you have, the Visual Studio Express Edition, okay, and take a look at it if you haven't. There's also some Visual Studio trials available off of the VBasic Dev Center. There's also linked how-to videos, okay. The How Do I videos are right off also the Dev Center. If you go to the Dev Center, you'll see a link to all of those. And then take a look at our blogs, the VBT, my blog, Paul Vick. We all have like good content on there. So let's go ahead. I've got a couple questions. So let me try and drag this out of the way because I know you guys can see it. So, okay, is this only for VB or is it available in C# as well? Well, so the link to XML API can definitely be used from C#. XML Literals, Access Properties, IntelliSense is not available in C#. Any plans to implement? I am not aware of any plans to implement that. Okay, so Visual Basic, create your Visual Basic utility projects that work with XML. Okay, I got permission from Anders. You definitely can create VB utility projects inside your C# project. Okay, can VB.NET and C#.NET file be mixed in the same project? No, they cannot be mixed in the same project. Okay, they have to be different projects. They can be in the same solution, but they cannot be in the same project through Visual Studio. Now, there is a way, I think, to do it from a command line and from some utilities that are out there, but you can't do it from Visual Studio. Okay, so please let us know the recording link, download link. Okay, the download link will be the exact same link that you used to get to this live meeting. Okay. Will you be planning doing a LINQ webcast that goes into details covering LINQ Lambda expressions? I could. I kind of showed that a little bit before in the What's New in Visual Basic 9 webcast. But yeah, maybe I could put that on the list for things to show off. So it looks like that's all the questions. Unless you guys are typing away, I'll wait a little bit. But I'd like to thank you. Thank you very much. And this is recorded, so the recording will be available by, I think, 5 o'clock this evening. So check back tomorrow. Because I know there's no other better way to spend your Saturday morning listening to me talk again at you. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Thanks a lot, Mike. All right.